The European Union has been setting out proposals for a gradual resumption of travel and tourism as the industry tries to survive following the coronavirus lockdowns. Here's the EU Commissioner Margherita Vestager outlining the measures.
We need carefully reopen borders within Europe. So we have adopted guidance for Member States on a gradual, coordinated lifting of restrictions on the free movement in Europe. Second, people need, of course, to be able to travel between European countries. So we are giving guidance on how to gradually reopen transport links without risking the health of travellers or transport workers. Third, travellers and workers, they need to know that the places that tourists visit, that they are safe. Hotels, restaurants, beaches, other tourist sites, they need to be run in a way that minimises the risk of passing on the coronavirus.
Well, tourism normally accounts for 10% of the EU's economic output, and these plans involve countries working together to gradually remove travel bans and then border checks. Germany has announced that there will be a gradual easing of its border controls, starting from the 16th of May, when its border crossings with France, Switzerland and Austria will be opened. For more on the German government's position, here's Jenny Hill in Berlin.
We heard from Angela Merkel today, who I think, given her love of the European project and the internal market, is very keen to start reopening borders. But Germany's position is that it's not simply a matter of what the infection rates are like in those neighbouring states. It's also to do with what kind of measures are in place. So she said today there's no point in reopening a German border with a neighbouring country if restrictions and measures aren't symmetrical on either side of those borders. So I think there's a lot more work to be done, although Germany has now said that come the middle of June it will lift border restrictions as long as a number of those caveats are met. And of course, chief among them is the question of how well those neighbouring countries are doing when it comes to keeping the outbreak under control.
Well, another country that has a huge interest in reopening its borders to tourists is Greece. And here's the Greek Minister for Tourism.
We will safeguard the health of both our population and our visitors by ensuring, as I said, that depending on the agreements that we'll make with other countries and on a pan-European level, that we can use either tests or other means to limit the risk of spreading the virus.
So their strategy is testing and on a grand scale. But before the pandemic, Greece used to receive around 30 million foreign visitors a year. So it's going to be a huge undertaking to ensure that tourism there this year does not spread the virus. Well, for more on how the new EU travel guidelines will actually work in practice, here's our Europe editor, Katya Adler.
Public health and national borders in time of crisis, that's up to EU members to decide for themselves what happens, and it'll be the same when it comes to tourism. Each EU country will decide for itself when to open its beaches and its borders to European tourists. Brussels can only advise, and the advice today was slowly, yes, European economies like the UK's have been hard hit by COVID-19, and tourism is an important part of the economy, especially for Mediterranean countries like Spain and like France. But the Commission advises that nobody should open for tourism unless they've got very good testing and tracing capacity for COVID-19 and unless there's strict controls on transport, on accommodation and leisure activities. And like with all of the lifting of lockdown measures, if there's a new spike in infections, then travel restrictions could be reintroduced pretty quickly. So basically, don't pack your summer swimsuit just yet.
Well, I want to put that point by Katya to Tom Hall, who is Vice President of Experience at The Lonely Planet. Tom, so our Europe editor saying don't pack your swimsuit just yet. How is this going to work out in reality?
Well, I think that most holidaymakers can be optimistic but so cautious. I think key points in all of this is going to be a slow process. It's going to goes country by country or region by region. As we're just hearing, some countries are out slowly, some are not there yet, and others there are just a huge amount of unanswered questions on.
So are we going to be looking at these kind of border bubbles like the Baltic bubble with Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania initially easing travel restrictions, or Germany, Austria, France easing travel restrictions between those countries? Are countries going to group up in that case?
I think that is a definite early step that we're going to see. Clearly, we're already talking about some of those that you talked about, travel possibly between the UK and Ireland and France being a possibility earlier before you could get to other destinations. And the very first thing is actually domestic travel. People are either going to loved ones or maybe taking a holiday a little bit closer to home. And I think one of the most robust areas of demand at the moment across Europe is for domestic travel and particularly self-catering. We don't really know what's happening with a lot of hotels and camps at home and further afield. So people are looking for as much certainty as they can get in cases. That means planning a holiday at home.
And when it comes to testing being at the forefront of enabling people to travel, when you hear figures like 30 million people crossing into Greece over the holiday periods, that's an awful lot of testing. Is that really realistic?
Well, I mean, tourists, anybody travelling, over the next few months is going to experience business very much as unusual, a series of new experiences. And this whole question mark of testing at a scale like that, what it might look like and how it might work in conjunction with tracing apps. We've heard the idea of tracing apps need to be a pan-European initiative, and very unusual experiences when people are passing through airports and on planes. Ryanair announced that they're planning on resuming 40% of flights, but you need to the toilet when you're on those. You will need to wear a mask, and you will need to have as contactless a process flowing through the airport as possible. Might result in significant queues, or it might actually in some cases result in people moving through areas of airports much slower than they have done in the past. And then when people get there, possibly enforce distance beaches and in other leisure facilities. So quite a few unanswered questions, but certainly the future state of travel means there's going to be a few more hurdles to get through, quite a few sacrifices in order for people to get somewhere and enjoy it. But in all of that, having people been through the last few months, the idea of a holiday appeal of it, I think, is going to still be a very, very strong.
Tom, thank you so much. Tom Hall there from The Lonely Planet. And apologies to our viewers for a bit of a drop out there in Tom's line, but I think you get the gist of what he was saying, that it's not going to be business as usual, certainly not anytime soon.